Today on Inspired Money.
So I always say that learning how to ride a book is like learning how to ride a bike. Once you learn how to do it, you can do it forever. Now, I don't know how you learned how to ride a bike, Andy, but I'm from the South, and my dad took me. We had a hill behind my house, and he took me, there's no training wheels on this bike, and he just pushed me down the hill. And then I went as far as I could stay balanced, and I crashed. And then I came back to the top of the hill, and then he pushed me down again. And so that's, it's a very painful process. Honestly, very similar to most people when they write their first book. But then once you do it, you can do it again and again and again, and you never forget it.
This is episode 50 with founder and CEO at self-publishing school, Chandler Bolt. Welcome to Inspired Money. My name is Andy Wong, a managing partner at RUNNYMEDE Capital Management. Each week, we bring you an interesting person to help you get inspired, shift your perspectives on money, and achieve incredible things. From making it to giving it away, Inspired Money means making a difference, creating something bigger than oneself, and maybe, just maybe, making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Inspired Moneymaker. If it's your first time listening, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Inspired Money is different from other personal finance podcasts because we don't want to just learn how to live with money. We want to put money and inspiration together so we can live richer lives, make a greater impact, and make the world a better place. I appreciate you joining me on this mission. Last week, I was in Philadelphia to attend Podcast Movement, a conference where there were about 2,000 podcasters. I gave a 15-minute talk entitled, "For a Great Podcast, Do Something That Scares You." If you're not a podcaster or an aspiring one, it might not be relevant to you, but check it out if you want to see how I incorporated my ukulele into the talk. It was a really fun experience, and I'll include a YouTube link in the show notes. So at Podcast Movement, one of the sessions that I went to was by Chandler Bolt, founder of the Self-Publishing School. So his session, Self-Publishing, Amplify Your Content Efforts by Writing and Publishing a Book in the Next 90 Days. I wasn't really planning on attending the session, but kind of just stumbled upon it. And I sat down and really thought that it was good. I found that both his backstory and the success of his business to be fascinating, so I asked him to sit down for an interview. Now, this episode is short and sweet. Unfortunately, I was limited on time because I had to run off to another meeting. But even so, I think Chandler shares a lot of value. In this episode, you'll learn if you have a business, why positioning yourself in terms of pricing at the top of the market is important, why Chandler considers books to be the most inexpensive mentor and salesperson. And then whether it's for your company or maybe you're trying to establish yourself as an industry expert, why you might consider creating assets like a book that will generate lasting streams of income. Now let's get inspired with Chandler Bolt. Chandler, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to be sitting down with you.
Great to be here.
Yeah, let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
So my earliest childhood memory of money goes way back. Maybe not as far as most, but I was actually in scout camp. And so I'm an Eagle Scout, Boy Scouts, all that stuff growing up. But I remember I guess I was 11 years old, maybe 12. My mom sent me to scout camp, and my mom is amazing. And she was just one of those moms that sent you with like a bajillion snacks and drinks and all that. And instead of eating them, I just sold them and bartered them. So I think I came back with like a switchblade knife. I came back with money. I just bartered and sold all these awesome snacks. And I was like, I can get by. I can, take a couple extra apples at the cafeteria and sell my snacks to like make some money. And so I came back, and I think that was like one of the first times where I'm like, wow, this is kind of cool. I have something that people wanted, and I sold it, and I made some money off of it.
That's really funny. I get the impression you were like born as a businessman trying to figure out how can you make a buck. Is that true?
I think a little bit, probably. I think I was just born scrappy, right? So my parents, they met at a factory working night shift. So they were dirt poor from a small town in the middle of nowhere in South Carolina. And my dad was an entrepreneur. And my dad took his lumps as an entrepreneur, but it kind of started for him where he said it was Christmas and he got in financial trouble with his job. And he said, I'm never going to put my family in this situation again. I'm going to control my own destiny. He started a business. And I think just growing up subconsciously, it's just kind of in the background where, my friends' parents couldn't show up to their T-ball practices or to scouts or anything like that. And my dad was there. And I also saw how we were able to take a vacation or do all these things that we could only do because he was an entrepreneur. So I think that kind of that industrialness and the scrappiness and just the very much like my dad was always street smarts over book smarts, probably because he flunked out of college. So there was just always this appreciation towards scrapping and figuring it out. And yes, studies was important, but it was more important to be able to make it in the real world and to be able to earn a living and kind of do your own thing.
If you know what you want to do, I think I've heard you say that you recommend finding a role model, someone who's doing what it is that you want to do so that you can learn. Do you think that your father was a role model for you in that sense as an entrepreneur?
Oh, 100%. I'm a firm believer that if you want to learn something, you go to someone who's 2 steps ahead of you and learn it from them. Because if they're more steps ahead than that, they're going to say, oh, I have someone on my team that handles that. And if they're too close, then they haven't gathered enough experience. So absolutely, my dad was that. And I just remember it's all these weird things. I actually wrote a book on it with my brother. It was all these weird things that I learned growing up that I thought everyone learned these things. But then you kind of realize that, oh, wow, I actually had a special childhood in the sense that my dad taught me these things about money, about business, all these things that I thought was normal. I thought everyone learned it. But, once you grow up, you realize that was special and that he really was a mentor to me in business.
What were some of those important lessons or values that you learned that you carry with you today?
Oh, all kinds of them. I mean, number one, the importance of having your own business and the importance. So from a tax efficiency perspective, even if you don't have a business, or even if, your business makes $5, just having an LLC that you can use as a tax write-off. That was one of them. And he was big on that. I remember my dad saying that when he started in business, he was the cheapest guy in town. And that because he felt like he needed to be in order to get his start. And so, but what ended up happening is that people would refer him and they would say, hey, Larry, he'll give you a really good price. So cheap people attracted other cheap people. And then one day he just got frustrated because he said, no, I'm the best in town. So he did or does vinyl siding, windows, and gutters. So it's a construction business, right? So I don't want to be known as the cheapest in town. I want to be known as the best in town. And then he raised his prices. And then people said, oh, Larry, that's his name. He's not the cheapest, but he will do the best job. And then he realized that he was enabling people to refer him. So one of the big things that he taught me early on was if you're going to be in a market, go to the top of the market. Don't try to win just based on price. Go to the top of the market. And that also will allow you to hire really skilled individuals and pay them more than anyone else. And it'll just be kind of a more stress-free business. So those are 2 very distinct lessons that I remember him teaching early on.
How many books have you written?
6.
When you look at yourself, when you were a kid, did you think that it was possible that you'd have written 6 books when you got older? Or are you like the most unlikely author walking around today?
Absolutely not. I did not think I would write any books. I hated writing and I hated reading. And so I was in school, I would say, give me a test, but just don't give me a paper. You give me a test, I can study, I can memorize, I can get a good grade. But give me a paper and I'm going to flounder. It'll take me hours and I'll do really, really poorly on it. So I would actually take honors classes in every class except for English because I knew that if I took honors in English, they would make me read more and they would make me write more, which were the 2 things I didn't like doing. So, it was probably the most unlikely thing. But really, I think maybe, I don't know if this is a chicken or the egg. Like, did writing make me love reading or did I read more and then that made me love writing? I don't know. But the one thing I did realize growing up is, and this is especially when I dropped out of school, is I said, okay, I need to approach these next 2 years as if I'm still in school, just the school of the world. It's not, I'm not at College of Charleston anymore. I'm out in the world. So I need to approach with that same vigor in learning. Otherwise I can't expect to be more successful than my peers. And so I kind of invested a ton in seminars and conferences and books and all those things. And then really one of the biggest epiphanies for me was that a book is a $15 mentor. And when you think about it like that, so you're able to tap into the smartest people on the planet, and they put their life's work. Oftentimes people only write one book, right? Unless they're, a Malcolm Gladwell or someone who writes multiple, but they put their life's work into one book. So I could effectively get mentored by them for $15. All I have to do is commit the time to reading. And so then I think that really changed my mindset. And now I read a book a week. So about 50, 60 books a year. And that's been it's been the biggest thing that I would attribute my success to, is just continually learning and reading.
So you keep feeding your brain.
Oh, 100%.
If we can take a step back for a moment, had you written one book by the time you made the decision to leave school? And what was sort of the thought process at that time to make that decision?
Yeah, so I hadn't. I was writing it right as I was dropping out of school. So right as I was dropping out of school, I published my first book. And the thought process kind of behind that was nothing more than just, hey, I feel like I have some things I learned the hard way, that I have friends that need to learn it. So rather than having 20 or 30 independent conversations, let me write this down once, give this to them. And I think it would help them. So I think probably like a lot of your listeners, where it's, I have things that I've learned that I feel obligated to share with others. And that was it. That was the extent of it. And little did I know that we would, kind of catch fire with the book, and then it started selling well, and then started bringing in leads for my business, started bringing a few $1,000s a month in passive income. Like, it was the single greatest decision that I think I've made for my income and for my business. But it all started with just, hey, I want to help people, and put together this little PDF.
What was the change in mindset for you that got you from point A, where you did not want to you didn't want to have to write a paper for school, and then to be able to put your thoughts and ideas onto paper and self-publish a book?
Yeah, I think the change in mindset was probably rooted largely in the first time that I got a print copy of my book. And I just realized, from a legacy perspective, I could die tomorrow and this book's still going to be here. It might be at a Goodwill, but it's still going to be here, And so it's where I realized, wow, this is such an incredible opportunity to not only pass down lessons to my kids, to their kids, to their kids, all that stuff, but just to leave a legacy. When you're running an online business, you can feel like you're just kind of slinging pixels around on a page, and you really question, like, is this still going to be here 50 years from now when I'm off this earth? But there's something about a physical book when especially when you've written it and when you get it in the mail, that you just say, hey, wow, this is going to be here for a really long time. And it's a legacy piece. And so then I think it kind of opened my eyes to, okay, not only should I write more books, but I should read more books, because of some of the best lessons I can learn are encapsulated in those books.
And writing the first one, was that the hardest? That opened the door to saying, hey, I've got more to write?
Oh, absolutely. The first one's definitely the hardest. So I always say that learning how to write a book is like learning how to ride a bike. Once you learn how to do it, you can do it forever. Now, I don't know how you learned how to ride a bike, Andy, but I'm from the South, and my dad took me. We had a hill behind my house, and he took me, and there's no training wheels on this bike, and he just pushed me down the hill. And then I went as far as I could stay balanced, and I crashed. And then I came back to the top of the hill, and then he pushed me down again. And so that's, it's a very painful process. Honestly, very similar to most people when they write their first book. But then once you do it, you can do it again and again and again, and you never forget it. I can not ride a bike for months, and then I hop back on that thing, and now all of a sudden I still remember it, because it's just a skill set. It's muscle memory.
Coming up, we'll go beyond the topic of writing books and learn about Chandler's self-publishing school, his business that helps people to publish and market their book. But first, how I learned how to ride a bike without using training wheels.
Yeah, you went through more pain than I did. I think mine's not that much different. I had a friend who had a bike. I did not have a bike, and he left it at my house. And I said, okay, I need to bring his bike back to him. And there's a big hill between me and his house. And me being a really cautious kid, I was thinking, I'm going to walk it. I'll just walk it down. But then I was like, you know what? I think I'd rather sit on it. And now today they have these balance bikes so that the kids, they have no pedals,
Yep,
and the kids kind of learn. So I was sitting on this bike going down this hill, but my feet were just kind of like, walking down. And then as I was getting to the bottom of the hill, I was kind of coasting. And then I had like the balance bike before they existed. After that, I knew how to ride a bike. Like I never had training wheels. I just kind of self-taught. And I don't remember how old I was. I was probably around 6 years old or something. And what I didn't realize is that my mom was in the car behind me, but I didn't know that. She was watching me. And then when I delivered my friend his bike, after that, my mom's like, oh, you're ready for a bike. We're going to go get you and your brother a bike.
She knew you knew how.
The show notes for this episode can be found at inspiredmoney.fm/050. You'll find links to our guest, things mentioned in the episode, and we're adding transcripts, so check the website for updates. It's time for the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Today I want to talk about passive income, the idea that you can get to the point where you have assets earning for you even while you're sleeping. I've heard the statistic that millionaires have an average of 7 streams of income. I'm not sure where that comes from or if it's accurate, but it sounds good. Can you come up with ways to plant seeds so that your money will grow? In Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he's big on rental properties for generating passive income. But what if you don't have the money to invest in real estate right now? I want to give you 3 ideas of things that you might be able to do based on past Inspired Money guests. Number 1, start a blog. In episode 10 of Inspired Money, I talked to Sarah Von Bargen, and she created a blog at yesandyes.org. Bloggers like Sarah consistently use their blog to create and provide a lot of value for their readers, which can lead to an extraordinary amount of passive income. It comes in the form of advertising revenue and affiliate selling. And the thing about posting to your blog, the more you do it, your site will actually start bringing in traffic, which can correlate to dollars. Number 2, and this is on topic for this episode, write a book. Inspired Money has featured all kinds of authors, like the money coach Lynette Kalfani-Cox, Kyle Winey, who wrote the book Hackiversity, and James Montague, who wrote The Billionaires Club, The Unstoppable Rise of Soccer's Super Rich Owners. Now, in episode 12 of Inspired Money, the outspoken advocate for civil rights in the Episcopal Church, we spoke with retired Bishop Jack Spong. Not surprisingly, church clergy are not among the highest paying jobs. So it's his numerous books that have sold more than 1 million copies, and book royalties can continue flowing for many years, have provided well for Bishop Spong and his family. Number 3, sell products on the internet. In Inspired Money episode 13 with Gerald Zingraf, he shared his multiple side hustle businesses of creating products that sell at Amazon and other places online, and they're helping him to build wealth. One of his businesses, CubeFit, that sells healthy office products, generates annual revenues of about $2 million. Have you tried any of these? Or are you thinking about trying one of these ideas now? Email me at inspiredmoney.fm/Andy. I look forward to hearing from you. That's the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Inspired Money is brought to you by Runnymede Capital Management. We help you to plan, invest, and worry less. Learn more about us and educate yourself for free by subscribing to our blog at inspiredmoney.fm. You're listening to Inspired Money. I'm Andy Wong.
So you talk about Rich Dad, Poor Dad having an influence on you and being on a trip when you sort of had this aha moment.
Yeah, so reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad was one of the most impactful books I read early on in my life. And then the trip you're referring to is when I was, snowboarding. The book, I just launched the book, and the book made $400 the day before, and I was snowboarding all day. So it's kind of this epiphany moment for me of this is passive income. This is creating an asset that will pay you for years and years and years. And it's funny, I was actually just with my family a couple weeks ago for vacation, and we were playing Cash Flow, which is such a great reminder. So Cash Flow, the Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad game, such a great reminder of those principles. But yeah, that was a big turning point for me. And sure, like, am I making millions of dollars just off of my books? Absolutely not. But, did I create an asset years ago that still pays me at least a few $100 a month per book? Of course, right? And so just that concept, and we talk about this with self-publishing school students all the time, which is, hey, even if 3 years from now you get a check for the month of March or whatever random month you're in for $100, that's passive income. That's powerful. And it's for some people, it's a little bit of a retirement plan. For other people, it's just some fun spending money. But this whole concept of shifting your focus towards creating assets that are going to pay you years from now.
We're at a conference where there are about 2,500 people walking around. When you see them, do you see every individual as somebody who could potentially publish a book?
Oh, 100%. There's a New York Times study that says that 81% of people want to write a book. We know that less than 1% of people actually do. So that's actually one of the things that fires me up about what we do at Self-Publishing School is there's this huge contingency of people who have always wanted to do it, but they either A, don't believe that they can do it, or B, they've been told a bunch of lies about the process, which is you have to get an agent, you have to get a publisher, takes years, you can't self-publish. Self-publishing, that's kind of like the redheaded stepchild. Like that's only what you do if you can't if you're not good enough to get a publishing deal. Like there's all these myths that have been perpetuated and the landscape has changed. And so I think that's what really fires me up is seeing that, hey, these are people who not only could this be a really great opportunity for their income, and for their business, but it can also be a really great opportunity just for like the legacy piece that I was talking about earlier, which is I had a friend who he was talking to me about this, and it was the first time I actually thought about this. He said, I wish my grandpa had written a book. I never got to meet him. I would have loved to learn the lessons that he learned from being on this earth for like 70 years or whatever it was. And he's like, I think everyone should write a book, if no other reason than just their grandkids. Like he's like, would you have liked to read a book from your great grandpa? I'm like, yeah, I would have loved to read a book from my grandpa too, because I never got to meet him. He died when I was 1 year old. And it's like, imagine if I could have, because I always hear people talk about him, like how awesome he was. And it's like, imagine if I knew his core philosophies and what he learned from his time on earth. How much would that help me as a kid, as I grow up, all those things. So just, I think that's what inspires me is because you see so many people that, yes, it's a cool opportunity for them to write a book and they probably want to, they just don't know how to do it.
So you started creating these assets by writing books yourself and self-publishing. What kind of income can you generate? Those were generating like six figures for you?
Yeah, so the first one was about, I think in month one, it was $7,000, month two, $5,000, month three or $4,000. So it was a few $1,000s a month. But really for me, the bigger thing, and this is what we teach a lot of folks, is the leads in the business that comes off of it. So lead being, for those who aren't familiar with that term, it's a name, email, phone number, right? So people who are interested in my business. So that's one of, I think the most powerful thing is, yes, my books still make money. They don't make me rich, but they make a good amount of money. Where they do make me rich is in the business that is generated from those books. So Self-Publishing School will do about $5 million this year. And a lot of that is fed from those books. So leads that come from those books, speaking at a conference like we're at now, and then everyone gets a copy of the book. And then, 2 weeks later, they'll get on a call with us. They'll sign up for Self-Publishing School. Like that's just the lifeblood of the business. And so, yes, the books make passive income themselves, but I think even more powerful is for folks who want to start a business. Like it was my foot in the door to start a business. And then I got leads from the book. And then those leads turned into my very first online business.
Right. So if a listener is a business owner, or even if they have a corporate job, writing a book could generate leads in business for them.
Oh, a ton of them. And, I think you heard me talk about this in my talk, but about how, there was one gentleman, David McKay, who in the last year, his books have brought in $10,000. So that's cool. But even more cool than that is $45,000 in business from leads. And those are only the ones that he can directly attribute. So there's probably more than that. But, he's got a photography business that brought in $45,000 in business in 1 year from the leads that come from his book. And he says he gets about 30 to 40 leads a week from his book. So I think he published 2 books. So just, for a lot of business owners, imagine what you could do with 30 to 40 leads a week, right? That alone could really grow your business. So yes, I think it's one of the best business decisions that I made, and for a lot of listeners that they can make to really get their business off the ground or to grow it if it's already thriving.
Yeah, I like what you say about a book being a salesperson for you.
Yeah, it's the silent salesman, right? So I send the book out on my behalf and people will spend hours with me and I'm not saying a word. The book is speaking. And then, like I said, people leave this conference with the book. They'll read it on the plane ride home. They're being sold on self-publishing school. Now, not in a way that like the book is just a sales pitch, because I'm very against that. The book is so good that they said, hey, if this book is this good, how can I do further business with this guy? So, that's when I say that the book is kind of like a silent salesman, is because it just goes out into the market, brings in new leads and brings in new customers.
Yeah, powerful lessons, because it's passive income and passive salesperson.
Yes.
Which is really incredible.
It's the cheapest salesperson that I have on staff currently, and it definitely complains a whole lot less.
When did you launch Self-Publishing School?
Yeah, so officially we launched it in February 2015. We launched like a beta that was called Best Selling Book System the year before, but really February 2015, we went from 0 to 1.32 million in sales that year. I think it was 1.1 million in revenue. And then we've grown to a little over $7 million over the last 3 years. And we'll do, like I said, I think 5 million this year. So just kind of steady growth over the last few years. We've had about a little over 4,000 students go through the program.
Wow, that's amazing. Really inspiring hearing your story, and not a traditional way, in that you made the decision to leave school, but you've built this really incredible business. I'd like to ask all of our guests, how do you define success?
For me, it's, will I get on my deathbed and look back on my life and say, did I leave it all on the field? That's one thing I actually think about a lot. And so I feel like I've been blessed with, talents and skill sets to grow businesses. So I feel like that's what I put on this earth to do, and to grow a business with the focus of doing a lot of good. So I feel like my life's going to be in two parts. Number one, make a ton of money through business. Number two, give it all away, kind of like a John D. Rockefeller or Bill Gates or that sort of thing. And so I think about, okay, am I using these talents and skills to the best of my ability? And when I get on my deathbed one day, am I going to look back and say, hey, I left it on the field? Or am I going to say, I phoned it in? And that's probably my biggest fear, is to look back and say, kind of phoned it in. So, when looking through that lens, I think that gives me the courage to make sometimes seemingly crazy decisions, like dropping out of school, or, I bought out my business partner and went multiple six figures in debt like 2 years ago. And then, that was a big gamble. The business wasn't doing well financially, but, I bought him out, then I paid off that debt over the next 11 months. And then now we're growing like crazy. And the return on that investment for me has been ridiculous. I mean, it's been a really great return, but those are sometimes in the moment seem like crazy decisions, but then go on to pay off in the long term. So I guess maybe one more thing on that is just, I remember a mentor early on, he said, there's a difference between taking risks and being risky. The smartest, most successful people take risks. The poorest and most unsuccessful people are risky. So like playing the lottery is risky. Taking a calculated risk to buy out your business partner is a risk, right? So when I take those big moves, I just try to think to myself, am I taking a risk or am I being risky?
It's a valuable lesson. I love that. Can you tell the Inspired Money listener where they can find more about you, where they can follow you, and where they can learn more about your self-publishing school?
Yeah. So if you're interested in learning how to write a book, we've got some free training. It's at self-publishingschool.com/free. So that's self-publishingschool.com/free. We've got, I think it's a 60-minute training there. We talk about how to mind map your book, how to get the book written quickly, so in less than 90 days, and then how to market it successfully. So that's the main spot where you can find all the information about Self-Publishing School and get some free training. And then I'm on Facebook. That's the only social media I have, so you can find me there as well.
Thank you so much, Chandler.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy.
So what was your favorite Inspired Money moment? I had a few. I like that Chandler mentioned that books don't make him rich, but they'll drive leads that can make him rich, to the tune of $5 million plus in revenues per year. He mentioned a couple of times about legacy, about creating something that he can leave behind when he's no longer on this earth. He wants to be able to pass on his story and core values to his kids, his grandkids, and maybe even his great-great-grandkids. And then finally, I think my favorite point is his piece of advice that there's a difference between taking risks and being risky. That is just such great perspective and something that you should think about whenever you're making a big decision. Are you taking a risk or are you being risky? If you had a different favorite Inspired Money moment and takeaway, let me know by going to inspiredmoney.fm/Facebook. Let's continue the conversation there. All the music on today's show is by Jim Kimo West. Aloha, Kimo. If you like today's episode, please subscribe now if you aren't already. In Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts, I would really appreciate it. And then also, if you could share your favorite Inspired Money episode with a friend or family member. I'm told that podcasts spread by word of mouth, so please go out and do your thing. Thank you for tuning in. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you.